Welcome back to another episode of the Halal Gap. My name is Skandar Atik, and as always, I'm your co-host for today, and I'm joined alongside
Sophia Alani, your other co-host, and as always, the man behind the mic, Hamada Arafi. Where you at?
So,
What's Up, Dude. Today, we are very excited to be joined by an incredibly special guest. Sophia, take it away.
Tasneem is a bilingual Canadian-American producer, singer-songwriter, and multi-instrumentalist. A child of a South Asian Kenyan father and Ugandan mother, their multicultural upbringing has influenced their creative alternative sound. They have shared stages with John Legend, Florence and the Machine, Common, and many others. Tasneem has written and produced 2 solo EPs, which can be found on SoundCloud, Spotify, and Apple Music. They currently work as a music producer mentor at Daniel's Launchpad Artscape, Toronto, focusing on women and non-binary musicians and producers, helping to bring marginalized voices to the forefront and speaking truth to power. Please welcome, joining us all the way from Toronto, Tasneem.
Hey!
Woo!
I'm so happy to be here.
We're so happy to have you.
I was stalking your Instagram before.
Excellent.
Oh,
Yes.
feedback is welcome.
Really cool. So many wonderful things that you guys are doing, and so many wonderful Muslim artists and Canadian artists that you're supporting in and around Edmonton as well, which is really cool. A few locals that I was like, hey, I'm excited about these people and their art. Like, where do I see this film, or where do I hear this artist do poetry, or whatever? It was exciting.
Yeah.
That's
No, I
good. I'm
appreciate
glad
that.
it's
That's
achieving what we want it to. That's awesome.
It's kind of like Fly. It's kind of like a sexy Instagram. Like, everyone's really beautiful too. I was like,
Thank you.
That's also what we're trying to accomplish. That's perfect.
I was like,
No,
when are they going to open the doors back for travel? I'm trying to get over to Edmonton.
Yeah, hey, it's where all them good-looking, talented people are, apparently.
Apparently.
So
tell us
enough
about
about
yourself.
us. Let's hear about you. Tell us about yourself, your background, how you came into the industry.
Well, I was born in Guelph, Ontario, Canada, and my father is also Canadian. Both my parents are Canadian. I'm Canadian and American. I don't know why why I just said my father. That was so weird. But my parents were educated, immigrated from Kenya and Uganda to Montreal and studied at McGill. And then my dad's a professor of Islam, and his first job was in Oklahoma in the United States. And I grew up in the United States. And when I was young, I discovered music, and I really clung to it. Like, I think I was maybe about like 5 or 6 when I first discovered that music was really what I wanted to do. I'm going way back, you guys. And I I really dug my heels into music, and by the time I was like 9 or 10, I discovered the saxophone, and really, like, back in the day, they had you choose instruments in the United States. Now it's not so much anymore in schools. Like, you can't choose instruments. I think the arts, there's not a lot of money. I don't know how it is in Canada. I've actually asked some people recently, but no one can really give me a concrete answer on, like, arts education in early kind of like elementary school in Canada. Do you guys have any experience with that? Like, instruments, like when you were like
I mean,
around
I
9 or 10,
know.
did they have you choose?
Yeah, I think I feel like everybody had to learn the accordion at some point, but
Do you
is that
mean
just me?
recorder? Do
The
you mean
recorder. Sorry, that's what
recorder?
it's called. Yeah. That's what I
Oh
meant.
my
That's what I
god.
meant.
Ah,
The thing that looks like a flute, but it's not. What's that called? That's a
right.
recorder. Okay.
That's a recorder. It's like plastic. It's plastic.
We have a very large Ukrainian population here, so you might have learned the accordion too. That's possible.
It's true.
But yeah, no, the
I
recorder
remember
was the good go to.
Yeah, I remember picking the saxophone as well in, like, the 5th grade, but I don't know,
What?
Sikandar has nephews, so maybe you know. Are they playing instruments?
I don't think they have to pick an instrument. I don't know though. Actually, it's a good
I,
question.
I, my sister-in-law
Hamada,
is
did you
actually in
ever?
the education system, so I'll jump
Oh.
in. And
Oh,
she teaches music in West Vancouver, and
okay.
they don't assign. So, like, I think there's like a separate program that you have to take if you want to do like serious music and if you want to pick an instrument. and usually then they like let you pick an instrument or whatever. But
Okay.
otherwise, they just like teach you everything.
The accordion, apparently.
Apparently, yeah. Exactly. I remember when I was coming through elementary school, it was like everybody learned the xylophone, and that was like
Really?
the
Really?
instrument we had. Yeah, xylophones and drums.
Cool.
Wow.
That's cool.
Yeah, I think well, now I think there's just not enough money for arts education in the United States, but then it was like if you wanted to learn something, you could choose it. And my mom was like, "You better pick the flute." And I was like, "What? No." And I picked the saxophone, and my dad was like, "Pick whatever you want." And then I ended up just playing it all through high school, and I became kind of not a prodigy, but I would say I'm here like tooting my own proverbial horn, but like I became quite talented, and I studied it, and I decided to go to New York and study jazz at NYU, and then I discovered that I was like a songwriter and also a instrumentalist, and I liked piano, and I taught myself, and then I picked up the guitar, and I also taught myself how to play the guitar and write songs. And I realized, like, oh, about halfway through studying, I was like, oh, I'm not just like a saxophone player. And I graduated with the degree or whatever, but I kind of like circumvented the whole thing. It was like, I kind of just wanted to live in New York City and like have a rock band, which I did. And I also started acting too. Have you guys watched Never Have I Ever? Have you?
Yes. Oh my
Yes.
God, I binged it in one day.
Yeah,
Wow,
so-
that's
so, yeah.
intense.
Took me 2 days, but yeah, I also
It,
went hard.
it also took me 2 days. Okay, Sophia,
Amateurs.
Yeah.
clearly.
Yeah.
Well, the reason why I bring it up is because I was watching it and remembering how it was for me early being like auditioning and like what kind of roles there were available, and apparently and how many people were up for the roles as well. And apparently the actor, the Canadian Sri Lanka, she's Canadian Sri Lankan from Mississauga, apparently she beat out 15,000 other actresses. I'm like, there are 15,000 other like young daisy actresses in the Western
amazing.
world. Like this is weird. Like, whoa. So because I was
Yeah.
thinking of that time, when I was in college, I mean, it wasn't like there wasn't like that. It wasn't like that. So I don't know why I brought it up. Okay, shout out to the cast of Never Have I Ever. You guys are dope.
Yes. Hopefully they're listening. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So yes, you're all dope. Also Mindy Kaling.
Yeah, they're all listening. They're all listening and they're tuning in. Actually, wait, I'm sorry to bring this up, but it has to be brought up. You think they might be listening, and that's real, because guess who has been watching my Instagram story?
Is it
Who?
Mindy?
No, Jay Sean.
What? Jason?
I mean,
Like from back in the day?
Yo, I only have
Like,
six.
baby,
you never
are
know.
you down?
Jay
Yo,
Sean, what
baby,
up?
Yeah. Shout out to Jay Sean. Keep watching my Instagram story. You know it's popping. Like, I only have 600 people, and it's like Jay Sean keeps watching. I'm like, okay, there's nothing really that fascinating here, but go off. Like,
That's a pretty cool claim to fame. Yeah, tell him, direct him to the Mosquers Instagram as well, if you can. Next time you catch him creeping.
next time he's creeping.
Yeah, so just bringing it back to like the music. So you said you like went to NYU, you studied jazz, but throughout that you also learned all these other instruments and figured out your songwriting
Yes.
talent.
I had a rock band called Jungly, and
Ooh.
I know, we were so cool, and and I got to play with Khalees. She sings that milkshake song. Some people
Yes.
yeah, I got to play with her on Saturday Night Live. That was like my first professional gig.
How was that?
That was really cool, because if you think about it, like how many people have graced that stage? I mean, it's, yeah, sure, like thousands of people have played music, but it's like a very small few, who can say that they've been
Totally.
there on that stage and playing music with these people. I mean, so I kind of felt like things were off to like this great. I was like, wow, okay, I'm doing it. And I played with jungly for a while, but you were going to say something, Sophie, and I want you to ask the question that you were going to ask so I can answer it. But yeah, so I had a rock band and was kind of ending college and then beginning life in New York City. And you were going to ask something. And
No, I was just gonna ask, like, how did you kind of come into your songwriting? Like, how did did it start with poetry, or were you just like finding beats and then found that adding words was like something that came really naturally when you were making the music, or like how did that kind of come up?
It's really interesting that you say poetry because that's exactly what it was, and I think that there was like this kind of yearning. I remember when I was 16, I like bought a used guitar from somewhere and like started plucking on one string with it and like kind of like singing my poetry to it. But I think um as I started like at the toward in the kind of middle of college and as I started sort of teaching myself guitar and piano and stuff like that, like I would just sit down and kind of let things like I usually talk about my songwriting process as being like I call it regurgitative because things just come like they come and I really some kind of say that it's just kind of like divine the way like I don't really work on stuff when I'm writing like oh, okay, I'll come back to it next week or oh I like this and I'll do something. I kind of just sit down with the guitar at the piano and the song comes and it's born and then I move on to the next thing. And then I'll rehearse it or want to record it or whatever. It's a really cool process and every time I write a song I'm like, well, this is it. Like this is the end. Thank you. Mashallah. I'm so glad that I wrote this song and it was a good run. Every time I'm like it's been a good run. Like we've done it. And me and my spirituality and inside and my creativity and I'm like it was a good run. And then another one comes and over the years it's been like less and less that it comes like so whereas I was really prolific um maybe like in college and shortly thereafter and then certainly when I moved to Los Angeles after that it was like less and less and less just because you grow older and you change and you want to get you want to get into different things and I started studying acting and taking acting class and maybe writing a little bit and like you know you grow and change as an artist um but that regurgitative nature started with poetry and it actually started with like poetry slams and like some
Hmm.
hip hop, a little bit of hip hop. But now today I wouldn't consider my genre hip hop or even poetry or anything like that. But it's certainly how I started for sure.
Was that mostly when you were in college in New York? You were getting into poetry, or was that even before
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I think it was in New York. I mean, it was like
Yeah.
um around the time of like where like independent hip hop was like super popular. So it was like maybe 2003, 2004 around there and I was like just finishing college and like getting into like slam poetry and like they would have there was this at the like at one of these theaters in Harlem they would have like a winner and you would get like
Yeah,
50
yeah, yeah.
bucks or 100 and I won like a couple times I
That's
remember
awesome. That's awesome.
definitely I definitely wasn't like sweeping you know what I mean like I definitely wouldn't go every time but I remember I mean I must have done it a handful of times and I remember winning a couple times and feeling really
It was
good about
enough. It was
myself.
enough to get you motivated to say, okay, this is something I want to pursue further. Or
Yeah, for sure. And I was like, oh
yeah,
wow, I'm good at this. And also, you know, women, kind of doing it wasn't not, there weren't as many women doing it as there were
right.
men, for sure.
Yeah,
Especially on the hip hop, especially as you sort of kind of as I gravitated towards hip hop and recording in the studio and writing hip hop songs and stuff like that. Like you can hear elements of hip hop in my music for sure, but I wouldn't call myself a hip hop artist today. I'd call myself a songwriter, and I feel like the genre would be alternative or like folk alternative,
yeah.
maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, throughout that time period that you mentioned, like 2003, kind of up until now, you're starting to see more of that evolution of women in hip hop, or maybe I should say more of a recognition of women in hip hop. But you've kind of decided to take more of a songwriter approach to your music. Was that just coincidental, or is that something that you kind of evolved out of over time? Or
I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like an evolution thing. I think like
yeah,
in the beginning I was really, and also I think it's like a youth thing. Like when we're young, like we
yeah,
really. For me, I'll speak for me. When I was younger, I really wanted to like scream at everybody and yell at everybody and be like, "This is who I am. This is who I am." And interestingly enough, since I've even come to Canada, I feel like my music has even gotten softer and quieter and like sweeter, and like I've been writing like songs that are more like simple, and like the simplicity of things. Like I'm not so hyped to like explain everything to everyone in this like really big way, and like having this rock band like and calling myself jungly. Like I used to go on the streets. I used to go down the streets of I used to walk down the streets in New York, and people be like, "Jungly, what's up?" And I used to, I used to love it, and I called myself that because my parents used to call me that growing up, but
Yeah, my mom
my
did too. It was never a term of endearment, though.
no, no, but I loved it, and I kind of like reclaimed it for myself also
yeah, you
because
gotta
I have
embrace
this
that. Yeah,
I gotta have this. I have this massive hair, and so my mom is mixed, South Asian and East African. So her mom was born in Rwanda, and my dad is South Asian from Kenya. But so I think like growing up, there was a little like, I hate to say it, but I'm gonna get real. There was like some anti-blackness going on in terms of like, you know, like, and people in the community like the calling me jungly for that reason was like a
mm,
thing. It was like kind of,
Mm.
it wasn't like funny, but it was just like, guy, you're so jungly because of the way you look, you know what I mean?
Mm.
And yeah, but I embraced it. I was like, okay, but now I'm like, okay, I'm good. Like I'm good with Tasneem. Like I dropped the jungly at some point, but like,
I mean, a lot of times people don't think about the layers behind why people decide on whatever moniker they decide on, right? And I think it's really fascinating to hear the reclamation of the term almost, So that's really cool. And I think kind of hand in hand with that is, with the idea of hip hop and you saying that you kind of you evolved out of that. One thing that you've mentioned that you've kind of held on to was this idea of talking about uncomfortable truths, which is kind of um, central to a lot of hip hop, but then a lot of poetry, a lot of other forms of music as well. Is that something that like? Can you talk a little bit more about that? And then also, is that something that you worry about in terms of how we can present that in something that could be commercially acceptable, or is that not something that you're even considering?
well, that's a really cool question. It has like so much depth and weight. As I was listening to you talk, I was like sink. I felt like I was sinking more into my chair. Like, oh no, how do I answer this? But I think
No, there's no right or wrong answer. This is just a conversation.
no, it's really great question, and I think it deserves like some serious attention, and like also deserves some depth and weight too. Like I think there are so many uncomfortable truths, but that artists can talk about, and especially Muslim artists, like we're confronted with a lot. Like
Totally.
we're confronted with like people wanting us to tell these stories, whether they're Muslim stories or not. They happen to be our stories, and we happen to be Muslim or South Asian or whoever we are, and people are expecting us to tell story. And there's this whole idea that's kind of going around. I think especially with like representation of like, hey, this is just one story. like this doesn't represent the whole community or the whole, like every single person at the Mosquers, like
Right.
every single one of your followers is not going to identify with this podcast. But the whole idea of these uncomfortable truths is to just kind of push through and tell your story, whether or not it's viable commercially, financially, whatever. I personally think people are behind. People are far behind in terms of what is viable and what is commercial, and what, like, people are not willing to get on this, like, train of something that's different or something that's left of center until someone says it's cool, right? Like, so until someone's like, hey, Tasneem's music is really cool, I think people are hesitant to be like, it's cool, but it's when you look at my music, and when you listen to it, or when you even look at my image or whatever, like, it's it's not really sounding like anyone else. You know what I mean? I'm really telling my own story, and I really feel like that's because a lot of people maybe aren't ready to hear from what it actually sounds like to be a first generation Canadian Muslim artist talking about uh, talking about their experience of what, and actually, like, what that sounds like. So for example, I hear a lot of people, like, and I guess maybe I can sound to some people like I'm hating a little bit, but like I hear a lot of first generation uh artists, whether they are Muslim or first generation artists, mimicking something else, mimicking another sound. But I think the uncomfortable thing to do would be for us to really be like, hey, this is my experience, this is what it sounds like to sit in high school and be made fun of because my name is weird, or this is what it sounds like for me to sit in high school, or for people to be like, oh, you're fasting, or oh, you wear hijab, or to like I feel like there's a whole genre of music that there's a whole
Mhm.
genre of storytelling that is that voice, and a lot of artists are really busy mimicking other people's like, I see a lot of Muslim artists that are like, even like, I'm not hating on Jay Sean, I love his music at all, but he doesn't, I don't hear his music and I'm not like, oh, that's what
He
it
listens to
sounds.
this podcast, so be careful.
When I listen to his music, I'm not like, oh, that's what it sounds like to grow up in London as a first generation. Like, I'm like, oh, that's what it sounds like to try to, like, I don't know. I do. I'm gonna sound like people are gonna listen and be like, oh, Tasneem's a hater. I'm not.
No, I think it's cool. I think you're definitely talking about a lot of like when you mentioned representation, like I think that's the whole point, right? Like people want to see themselves reflected in the art that they consume, and that doesn't happen all the time, and that's a totally fair point. But speaking of which, I know that as we mentioned in your intro, you work as a music producer mentor. And so just speaking about like
Yes.
your own experience, and like you are mentoring, young artists and young producers, and like you have a focus on particularly marginalized communities, being like women and non-binary artists. And so like how do you feel like your experience helps to mentor them, and like what advice do you have for young artists?
I think that, first of all, I love mentoring and helping people. So if you're listening to this, like, please find me on any of the platforms, socials, and connect with me. And I'm always down to like answer questions and connect with people. And I get so much out of kind of being of service to others. And I th- I think that it it has helped, and in that way, I will segue into like, it helps me so much. Clearly, that's not why I do it, but like I really enjoy doing it, and it's been actually really. Everything I've been through, I think like every experience I have had really has been able to play out at Artscape, at Launchpad, with helping everybody. I mean, we had a before COVID happened, we had about three or four different artists come, and we had a meeting of all these young artists that were women and non-binary artists come in and talk about their issues and things that they have problems with, or going to the studios late at night, or feeling alone, or being women in the industry, or not being able to find people to work with. And it was like, these are all things that I've been through before, that I had to navigate alone. And I think too, being a producer, like I produce all my own music, and I think that it's really actually, I think, empowering and helpful to young women, regardless of whether or not they produce their own music, to see that someone has taken the initiative to navigate the being an independent artist on their own without the help of anyone. Not saying without the help of any men or anyone, but just without the help of being like, you know what, I can produce my own music. It could be it's only other people or the industry, or the fact that there aren't any lot of women actually producing their own music, that shouldn't dictate whether you can do it or not. So I feel like I'm empowering young voices to go produce their own stuff and to be their own champion. And I feel like that's a little bit of what's missing in the music industry right now. Like I don't I don't see a lot of people like, hey, I'm here to champion you. Like it's kind of like, it's hard. The music industry has changed so much, and it's kind of dog eat dog. Like people are just trying to get put on, or just trying to get one song licensed, or in a film or television show, or trying to get put on a playlist on Spotify, or like it's hard to break through that. So it really, I think, empowers me to go and help um, other women, especially young women, and non-binary people, queer people, LGBTQ two spirit, like those artists, like who have no idea, who are like, but how do I do this? How do I get started? Like, help me. You know what I mean? They don't feel that they have the network, or even they don't feel like they can ask somebody, you know? So,
Yeah.
um,
No, it's
did,
interesting because I think like
does that
on the one
answer?
hand, Sophia, does that
Did
answer
that
your question?
Sorry, there's just really loud motorcycles outside my window right now. I was trying to say yes, but I had to mute myself.
awesome?
I think it's interesting because, on the one hand of the equation, it's easier now than ever before to make music, right? I mean, with technology and with like home recording equipment, which is fairly inexpensive, I think we can create content a lot easier than ever before. But at the same time, like you said, it creates that other issue, which is how do you get noticed in a sea of information and,
There's so much.
and a sea of content that's out there, right? So it's I don't have a question. I'm just rambling right now about that.
No, I love
But
it.
no, but it is cool to see that there's people like yourself who are out there helping to navigate people. So that's awesome. Um, I want to change course a little bit and talk about
Okay.
your latest EP, which was released. And there's a lot of buzz
Yes.
about one particular song called "All Your Cousins," which is the opening track.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that song? What's it about? How was it developed? What was it like working with Timothy Miles? Tell us everything about that song.
Timothy Moss is amazing. He plays saxophone for Solange, and he's a friend, and we connected, and I was like, yo, help me with this song. And uh I also worked with another friend of mine whose name is Carl Sukia, who played with this iconic NYC band back in the day called Bamboo Shoots, and they were signed. They were four South Asian uh, men signed, and they won a contest, and they were signed to Sony for a year or two, and they did a tour, and they were cool, and they had a dole player, and they were amazing. Anyway, I worked with Carl, lives in Los Angeles now, and I worked with him on that too, and Timothy too. And wait, the question was all your cousins. Oh yes, it started. So a lot of people like have asked me about all your cousins, this concept of like family, like, and especially as brown people, like brown people and family. And it really did start out like that. Like I was like, I met a friend, and actually I was at the mosque Mosquers. And I was at the mosque and I met a friend, and I met a friend, and they were like, "Yo, this is my cousin." And I was like, "What?" And then he was so dope, and we were all like, "Yo, let's go get tacos and like hang out and like," and I was like, "Whoa." And I'm like, "I want to meet," and I was like, "This guy's super dope." And I was like, "I want to meet all your cousins." And then it kept like repeating in my head. And I was like, yo, everyone. And then, like, this idea of meeting everyone's cousins and knowing them and how kind of intimate that is, especially for us, and my own, like, connection to my own family, my own cousins, and my own, like, connection to, like, what it means for us as, like, as brown people to, like, we're all about our cousins. Like, I don't know about you, but me I don't know about you, but like me, I'm all about my cousins. Like before COVID hit, I like lived with my cousin. We lived in on the Danforth. But like in Toronto. But shout out the East End, Toronto, stand up. But yeah, so this concept started out as a love song, and then it turned into this call, this revolutionary call. And I was like, why am I writing a love song about like family and brown people and myself, and like how I would feel about kind of falling in love and like meeting people's cousins, and like meeting the person I love, meeting their cousin, and like how does this all play out? And then all of a sudden it switched, and I was like, what? This is turning into this revolutionary call. And it turned into this thing where I was like, yo, I'm calling on you to like stand with me in this revolution that's happening right now. And it was kind of at the beginning of, I started writing it kind of at the beginning of that Me Too movement, and there was a really strong sense of a revolution in that way, and there was a really also strong sense of uh, Black Lives Matter, and that thing had come out of, it was mostly in the United States, and then the two of them kind of merged for me, and then the song changed into a revolutionary song. But I think it always is like a love song. It always starts from a love song of like meeting someone, and then thinking about like meeting all their cousins. You know what I mean? Like how intimate that is, like when you meet someone and you like somebody, and
Mhm.
then you're thinking about like, and then you're thinking about their cousins, and like, and then you've met their cousins. It's all very intimate and brown. It's all very
Yeah.
brown and intimate.
There's definitely a connection to like how close you are with somebody, and then seeing all these different facets of their life, which definitely include close family and extended family. But I think it's super interesting. So you mentioned that like it started as a love song, it kind of started as a very personal song, and then became more of like a revolutionary kind of anthem for you. And so I'm just like wondering, because you also had said once that sometimes in the current state of the world it kind of seems like heartbreak is a luxury. And so how do you feel, because I've definitely felt that too, like with everything going on, it's like, am I allowed to be mad or sad about the stuff going on in my life, when by no means is it the worst?
For
And
sure.
how do you balance that personal experience and the broader global like experience, especially when you use your art to and your music to address so many issues? Do you find it hard to balance that, or does it just evolve that way naturally?
I think it evolves that way naturally, and it always stems from love. Like I remember maybe about 5-10 years ago when I was songwriting, I always wanted to state like, hey, this is what it is, and give this message. But then I think I grew as a songwriter, and I realized that talking about love, like people connect with that more. I think there's something like, out of someone did some, I don't know the exact percentage, but someone did some study, and they were saying like, out of all the Billboard hits, like 95% of music, of songs that make it to the Billboard 100, are songs about love. The other 5% are songs about something else. And
Mm.
so I'm not saying I took that data and then was like, well, now I'm going to write love songs. But it's like, oh, I found myself writing love songs and then being like, I can also like talk about what I want to talk about in the framework of this song. Like, it doesn't have to just be like, I guess I realized there can be a way to write about it all. Like, why does it have to be a love song or not a love song? Or it can mask itself as a love song, but like that's what Damascus is, right? Like, you're talking about, you said heartbreak as a luxury. Like, yeah, I was heartbroken when I wrote that song, and the reason why I called it Damascus and talked about Damascus, if you listen to it, it's like Damascus, everybody's in their feelings. I never ask you how you're feeling. And it's like, that's kind of was what was really happening. I don't know if you remember, it was like maybe 2016, where there was like this one woman in Syria, and she was like all over Twitter and all over everything, and she was like, we're begging you to pay attention to us, and remember us. Like, you have to retweet this, or you have to, like, we're dying here, it's crazy. Like, and I remember being so moved by that one tweet, and by being like, what is happening? Like, are these people, no one's asking about them, no one's like, I hope this doesn't last forever for them. Like, this is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And here I am, like, sitting in my LA apartment, like, thinking, being heartbroken, and like being in my feelings about being heartbroken. And then I started to frankly, I started to feel guilty and feel pretty shitty about it. And I wrote Damascus as a way to kind of process feeling shitty about being heartbroken, when there was all this real time, like, suffering happening in the world. And like, how can I be here in LA in my like little apartment with my guitar, like feeling like rejected or whatever, because I asked somebody out and they like didn't want to go out with me, or whatever it is, how can I feel that?
Yeah.
And especially too when there's like, such things going on. Then it was like the next thing, if it's not Syria, it was like, black men in America being shot, or if it's in here, a lot of like indigenous, what's happening to a lot of the young missing women and girls, young indigenous girls, like that, the murder and the missing women, like stuff like that. Like, how can I be so consumed with myself when there's all of this going on? Or the pipeline and the wet'suwet'en, things happening in Canada. I remember when I first got here, I was like, whoa, like, because you don't hear about that in the US. You don't hear about that. You don't hear about the oppression and racism, like violent oppression and racism of the indigenous people in Canada. You don't hear about that in the US at all. Like,
I think half the time you don't even hear about it in Canada, to be honest with you. Like,
to be honest,
as a community, do not do a great job of solidarity with our Indigenous brothers and sisters, unfortunately. But I'm hoping that we're getting better.
I'm really trying.
Me too, man.
It's interesting because I totally agree. Like, there's no question about it. There's there's issues at the forefront of all corners of the globe that we have to be mindful of and that we have to be, aware of. I think one of the things that we also have to recognize is that it doesn't necessarily diminish in any way, struggles that we might be going through personally, or things that might seem somewhat menial to us. It might be actually, a big thing in the moment. So I think there's like a level of, probably balance that needs to happen between recognizing how big these global issues are, as well as saying that, okay, you know what, sometimes I'm just going to get pissed off at the fact that people don't know how to pronounce my name, which is also something that you've talked about. And,
yeah, it really pisses me off.
But it's funny that that's probably best that Sophia did the intro today, then, because I have this weird tendency of turning into the whitest man in the world when I do podcasts sometimes and butcher people's names. So so I'm glad we didn't do that.
I really laughed. Would you have said Tasneem?
Probably.
No, it's not in any context outside of this podcast would I have said Tasneem, but in this podcast there's a high likelihood that I might have said Tasneem.
I don't know what I would have done Sikandar. I
People,
might have.
no. Here's the thing: people have called me out on it. I've got like a decent relationship with people who we bring on this podcast, so they're more than happy to call me out on it. But yeah, I've had my fair share of name fails, but it is something that I think is absolutely worth getting upset about sometimes. And you've talked a lot about that. You wrote a song about it, even in terms
I
of
wrote a song
the
about it.
experience in LA, right? So I mean, what are you like? What is your connection to your name, and why did you feel like it was so important for people to recognize that in your music?
Well, this is amazing actually. Okay, so it goes back to jungly. Like jungly, for people who are listening that really don't know what it means, and Sophia, you can chime in on this too, is like from what I understand, it's wild, unruly, and there were women really in South Asia who people would call jungly, who like were undesirable and you
Right.
would never want to marry them. Sophia, is that where you're also coming from, or?
Yeah, like I think the wild, unruly, like I think whenever I was like misbehaving as a child, that's kind of what my mom would be like, "You're being such a jungly."
Yeah.
And it just, yeah, I think it kind of means like this like very untamed, very like wild, and therefore probably very free woman, which, was clearly a problem for everyone. Um,
Clearly.
yeah.
And
But yeah, I
clearly,
agree, I agree.
and clearly maybe cross-culturally, and certainly sometimes maybe we don't want to talk about it, but in Muslim culture, cross-culture, South Asian culture, East African culture, I mean, this concept of like a free woman or a wild woman, I mean, come on, some people have problem with that, um so jungli means that. Then Tasneem is an Arabic name which is gender neutral. I feel like my dad maybe had some spiritual like intention going on with that. I don't know. My dad's really cool, but Tasneem means the springs in heaven where God sends the righteous to drink. And like to feel, I think to feel, to not like to be living in New York at that time and to like want to be cool and like want to be jungly and want to be like wild and unruly. Yeah, okay, it was New York, like whatever, it was 2004, I wanted to be cool, like, you know what I'm saying. I get it, but like to not want to embrace the theme, like that's crazy. And then also Sikandar, it's like, actually, I mean, I'm here to tell you it's cool if you would have called me Tasneem, because I called myself Tasneem like for a
Oh, it would
long
not have
time.
been cool. There's no
I mean,
difference.
but I called myself that for a long time, and to have
Right.
that
Fair.
inability to like embrace your own self and your own culture, your own language, your own ancestral like deep ancestral connection to who you are as a Muslim person, as a Muslim woman, as a Muslim man, as a Muslim non-binary person, or whatever, like whoever you are, to not embrace that, who you are, that's like a painful deal. and so
Totally.
when and so when I did just tap into that and connect with that, I and that was when I moved to LA and my life changed, and it was just more of a space where I could really learn more about myself and learn more about my name. Um and I dropped the jungly kind of when I left New York. I was like, I'm not really jungly, and I'm going to LA, and I'm gonna be a big star, and like it's gonna be, I gotta have my name. And and then yeah, I I I wrote the song about it because people in Los Angeles, first of all, shout out to Edmonton. I've been to Edmonton in my adult life once, but it was all I need to know. From I want to go back because there must be a lot of Tasneems in Edmonton, because people were dropping my name like it was like like
There's
they have
a
heard
few.
it.
There's a few.
They heard it 1,000 times. They're like, "Oh, Tasneem, how are you?" I was like, "What?" Um, but yeah, so like I wrote this song because people in LA, like there is such a blatant disregard. Like it at some point I was like, should I just like drop, like this is becoming so difficult, and it's exhausting trying to explain to someone how to properly pronounce your name, and then trying to explain to them that it's not actually difficult. Like people be like, "Oh, that's too hard for me. Can I just call you Taz, or can I just call? Do people call you something else? Can I just call you T, or And I'm like,
All the
no,
nicknames.
yeah, all the nicknames busted out. I'm like, there's no nickname. Like, my name is Tasneem. It's actually really pretty easy. And
Yeah.
and then to have to explain it, to people over and over again, it's just, I mean, I don't know if you can relate.
Oh, with a name like Sikandar, I can definitely relate. There's no question about that.
Yeah, I cannot. I think the worst thing people do to my name is they spell it with a PH, which that grinds my gears, especially when it's right in my email address and or the email I just sent them, but whatever, guys. But yeah,
Right.
no, I think, have you heard of Nasra Adam? She's a local poet here, but she's done quite a bit of work elsewhere as well, and she has a poem that I think is actually on YouTube called Victory.
Okay.
And it's about her name and how like she would change her name kind of when encountering people who were not black and Muslim like her, and would be like, I'm Nazra, and then how like eventually she kind of heard the story of her, why her mother named her that, and like all this stuff, and it was just, it's a really, I'm butchering the it's just so much deeper than that, but if you want to look it up, I
I
think you would
will.
really enjoy it, because it's very much speaking to the same kind of, just kind of going back to like the root of who you are and how that is connected oftentimes to your name. Not all the time, but definitely I think I think, I look like a Sophia, I feel like a Sophia. I think everyone I've met kind of looks and feels like their name. And so I think it very much is like very much connected to who you are. But I
Yeah.
also know people choose their names, and that works for them too. But I think you would really like that poem.
I'm gonna shout out to Nasra. I'm gonna look it up, and I can't wait to hear it. Because
Yeah, it's pretty dope. I'll send it to you. It's pretty
okay,
amazing.
cool. Please do. Yeah, yeah, Sikandar. I would just assume that it's just a lot of people. It's like
Yeah,
it's
I mean, no, like, because here's the thing: Tasneem is like a fairly straightforward name, right? I mean, I would
people
assume
butcher
there's
it.
not a ton of ways in which you can pronounce it, but it
No,
reminds me of
it's
when,
Kathleen, Tams meme,
yeah,
Tams Keen. Can I just call it like, because people can't do the sound. The sound
mm,
isn't in English the way it is in Arabic, or like I don't know. People just can't do it. But people who speak Spanish and French can do it. But if they
interesting.
don't, if they speak English only, it's a wrap. Anyway, carry on. Sorry, I want to hear this.
No, 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 no. I was just saying it reminds me of when Hassan Minaj was on Ellen a couple of years ago, or like I think a year ago, and he was talking about how everybody butchers his name, and he's like, in a
Yes.
world where we can all say Timothy Chalamet, it shouldn't be that hard for someone to say Hassan Minaj, and it's the same thing. I mean, it's like we tend to be a little bit more willing to give people some leeway saying our ethnic or more foreign names, but it's
Yeah.
not the same way when it comes to, I would say, perhaps some more, Eurocentric names, if you will. But
Yeah. Like,
just an interesting thing to note.
yeah, like Zach Galifianakis. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I don't know. It's almost to the point now where if like a non, South Asian or non-Muslim person says my name correctly, I'm like shocked. Like I like take a step back and I'm like, oh, okay, all right, you're putting effort into this one. I like,
Yeah,
it's an interesting thing. I mean, there's a lot that goes into a name.
it's true. And I think that you know, and I'm gonna watch this. I can't actually wait to watch this Nassar's poem, because I think there's a lot of, it's deep, you know what I'm saying? Especially for us too. Like, and I think because like, yeah, we have a lot of baggage. Like Hassan Minaj said that like for him that was like, I mean, I can only imagine that for him doing that was like almost like some crazy like moment, like a release, like a whole like at the end of the day, he's Hassan Minaj now, and so people know him. You know what I'm saying? So for him, he was like, "Yo, it's time. I'm on Ellen. Like, let me do this." You know, I mean, I can only
Totally.
I'm getting into his head a little bit, but sorry, Hassan, we know you're listening too.
Yeah,
Him and Jay
everybody.
Sean listen together every Sunday.
They get together every week.
Yo, they're like,
Just
yo,
for this.
yo, are we listening to Tasneem on Mosquers this weekend? What's up?
Every time, every time.
Yo, seriously. I mean, obvi.
But yeah, I guess I don't know, Sikandar, do you have any more questions? If not, we'll move on to our rapid fire section.
Oh my gosh.
Let's do it.
I'm,
Let's do it.
Okay, so basically we have a series of questions. We're gonna alternate, me and Sikandar asking you them, and it's just the first thing that pops into your head
oh no.
is your answer. So
Okay.
most of them are like multiple choice, so you don't have to think too hard, but there's a couple where you might have to dig a little.
Okay. I'm nervous. I'm nervous.
No dopey. Okay, Sikandar, you start.
Okay, right off the top, Canada or the USA?
Canada.
Nice. Who is your dream music collab?
Oh, oh my gosh. Who? Joni Mitchell.
Ooh, nice.
Okay. Okay.
Good one. It's a good one.
I'm gonna change this one. There's one written,
Okay.
but I want to know a different one. Who would play you in a movie?
Oh, good one.
Ooh. Jesus. Maybe Sarita Chowdhury. I don't know. Am I reaching? Or,
Okay.
I don't,
No,
I
hey,
don't know.
that's a
But-
good
Hey, man,
answer.
there's no wrong answers here. So like,
Maybe she might play me like later in life, because like like should I say the Mississippi Masala Sarita Chowdhury? she would play me. I don't know.
Yeah. Hey, listen, this is entirely hypothetical anyway. So I mean, you
Yeah,
can pick
right.
time.
Yeah.
You can pick.
Yeah.
Anything goes. Yeah.
Yeah.
all right. Next is your favorite type of potato.
Sweet.
Okay.
Nice.
All right.
That's a good one. It's a good
Okay.
one. It's a good one.
Which, by the way, is not a potato. Okay.
Shut your
Best
mouth.
show to stream on any streaming device right now. Like if you just had to binge watch a show, what would it be?
Orange is the New Black. It's old, but I love it. I love that show. It was such a great show.
It was good. Did you
Amazing.
read the book?
I didn't, I still haven't read the book. So I'm like, you know what? I was so in love with the show. I loved all the characters. I loved the writing. I'm a really big Genji Cohen fan. I think
Yeah,
she's
Weeds
incredible.
was I liked Weeds a lot more personally.
I did too.
Personally, that's just me. But
Same.
Orange is the New Black was great too.
And also Glow is really good too. I like everything.
Whoa.
Glow.
Yeah.
Is Glow
Glow.
her? Glow is Genji Cohen?
Yeah. Shout out to
Oh,
Genji
dang, I
Cohen.
know that.
We know you're listening, girl.
All the peeps.
Genji Cohen's
okay,
definitely
and-
listening. Okay.
Hundo P. Okay, and then the last one is your most rewatched movie ever in your life.
My gosh. I think for a while it was Princess Bride.
Yeah.
But I don't actually, there's one movie that I just love that whenever it comes on, I watched it. In fact, my dad recorded it. He's like, we recorded it for you.
Aw.
Isn't it? And it's really, it's Browntown. Water.
Water.
Okay.
I feel like I've heard of.
Wait,
Water.
have you not heard of Water?
I think I have heard of Water, but I don't think I've seen
Don't
it.
Google water because H2O shows up. Just FYI. Maybe throw water movie.
Too many results.
It's a Deepa Mehta film in 2005.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
She had like
Googled
those
it.
series of films, right? It's like Fire, Earth, Water.
Yeah.
Yes. It's so good, and I don't know why I just love it so much, and I just get so much from it. And it's just an incredible story, and it was an incredible film. And I think Tracy Ellis Ross would play me in, so I'm revamping. Sorry, Sarita.
That's all right.
We're gonna have
We
to
can-
fight over
we
you
can
now.
do
That's perfect.
bidding war between Tracy Ellis Ross and Sarita. Oh my goodness.
Actually, their
Amazing.
child. If Sarita Chowdhury and Tracy Ellis Ross had a child, that
baby gets to play you.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. Deal.
Amazing. Okay.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for doing this and for joining us and for your time today. How can people find you? Where can they consume your music? Where can they look you up?
They can find me on Twitter at I am Tasneem and Facebook at I am Tasneem and Instagram at Last Mango in Paris and SoundCloud at I am Tasneem. And then if you go to the Twitter, I think, is there a way that you guys can post it too? If you go to my Twitter, like the top, you'll find you can like hear my music on like all the platforms. So if you just go to that fan link, you can hear it on Spotify or Apple Music or Deezer or Tidal or whatever you use, YouTube or there's so many different platforms now. Goodness. Thank you guys so much. You guys are the best.
Thank you so much for joining us and for finding us. This was so cool.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of The Halal Gap. As always, you can find us on all social media platforms at Mosquers Film Fest. We hope to hear from you guys. No, we hope we can talk to you guys again. Just listen next time.